So, fucking call me old, but times are changing, my friends. Call me old, but the times, they are changing. I don't know about you guys. I still understand and remember the benefit of just doing something by yourself without other people around to tell you how it needs to be done, what it needs to look like, how it needs to sound, how you need to get it to people, how they need to hear about it, all that bullshit. It will always be better. Always. I'm going to say it right now. It will always be better if you do it like that. When I was young, zines, records, music, you had to learn marketing, distribution, all by yourself. What does that equal? I ask you, Bill, what does that equal?
What does that equal?
Freedom!
Yes.
Freedom! God damn it. So, fuck it, man. Might be a little bit cliche, but I think it's important that you have freedom in what you are up to. Freedom in this podcast. We can do whatever we want. People want to be involved. That's awesome. They just have to know that this is what we do, and they're welcome to be a part of what we do if they are cool with that. Somebody wants to do something with us. Awesome. We're all for it, right?
Yep. They
just got to understand, like we understand, they do it the way they do it. We do it the way we do it. Why? Because we have the
freedom!
Because no one can tell us shit, Bill. And that's when you make awesome stuff eventually. Maybe not today.
Or yet.
Try to tour on home. I don't want to be an asshole. But it is important. And I think that overall, in a lot of aspects, we're losing the ability or the want, or maybe it's the drive, or maybe, like I said, I'm just getting old and times are changing without me. But the ability and the want to do something without anybody saying that you can or that they want to do that for you. Let me put that record out for you. Be on my label. I have a label. Be on my label. We have other bands. Be on my label. I'll publish your book. Fuck it. I'll publish your book. I mean, change this. And the cover, I don't like doesn't really work with my thing. But I'll do that for you. Fuck that.
Let me manage you and sell your artwork.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That's weird that you bring all this up, because in the last 2 weeks I've had so many people, just a weird rash of individuals by happenstance and like everyday conversation, give me that old line, you should do this. Whether it pertains to the radio show or whether it pertains to an upcoming art show or what have you. Like I've had, I don't know why, it's just been literally like 9 people in the last 2 weeks have been, you should do this. You should do this.
A good response to that is you should do something.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You should do
anything.
No, you should.
Yeah.
Go fucking do it.
Yeah. Maybe we're dealing today with an issue where it's really just at this market level. We've talked about this before in the show because to me it's a interesting topic, and it's when you get to that level, that market level, where you're selling a thing. You're buying a thing. You're trying to convince a person that that thing that you're doing is worth doing. Like, please validate me. Buy my thing. Come to my show. My band. We work so hard. We wrote songs, They're not good, but please. It doesn't matter if they're good. Come to my show. And now we're dealing with an insanely oversaturated world. Not to the bad, in my opinion. I think saturation is the best. Everybody has the ability to do this. How many people are doing this? Not that many. So maybe risk is really the key here. You can sit in your room and write songs and record them on your 4-track and be so kick-ass and finger broads and just be rad, Shave a fucking mohawk, paint your nails black. I don't know.
Stop describing everyone's 18-year-old dreams.
I don't know what your goal is, but whatever it is, that's cool. That's cool. But maybe the important part of this entire game is this risk that you take when it comes to monetizing and publicly dealing with a thing that you're up to. Because with that comes the success or the failure that people gauge shit on. That's just the way it works. You sell records, you don't sell records. Right?
That's right.
People listen to your shitty band or they don't listen to your shitty band. People love your awesome band or they don't. They don't buy it. Okay, so stop touring. Stop making any musics. But I think taking that leap to really put your shit on the block is very, very, very scary. Super, super hard. And you need a giant set of stones in your pants to do it. And with that, I want to welcome local writer and artist Brian Bieber to the studio today.
Oh, thanks, Scott.
Couldn't be happier to have you here, man. It's so nice, especially for us on this show and in this town where a lot of people aren't just dealing with this world of media, and which is the way I see us. I don't care what anybody else thinks. As far as I'm concerned, we're a media source. So it's awesome to have you here. Couldn't be happier.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
So I know that you're on the full campaign tour.
Oh yeah,
I know you're hitting it.
Yeah.
You're hitting it really hard out there.
Yeah, exactly. It's I'm a little bit concerned about oversaturation.
Yeah,
at this point.
maybe a little too much local saturation. It seems we got you last. I don't know what that is exactly, but
this is stop 3.
last stop.
Promo tour.
Last stop on my promo tour. But I don't know what everybody else has dealt with, but why don't we just start from the beginning, Mr. Bieber? And where did all this start for you?
Where the book or the
F that book.
Okay,
Let's talk about Brian.
Well,
When did all
funny to
this
say
start?
I would say it starts with a lot of the stuff that you were talking about. I mean, we've known each other since we were teenagers, and I mean, you kind of, nicely and efficiently articulated what I figured I was going to talk about today in your intro.
Great.
So, because it is sort of about, it came from this sort of like DIY punk rock thing that we, that we learned about as teenagers, and I think I kind of, you kind of forget about it because, or at least I did. Maybe I don't want to speak for anyone else, but I think as when we were kids, if you wanted to do something, you did it, and so it's like you're in a band, put out a tape, and then you put out a 7-inch, you put out a CD if you could afford it in the late 90s. I never could.
Yeah, never made it to CD.
Yeah, exactly. Never quite made the leap. But strangely, it was on vinyl. Like
Yeah.
that's the weird.
Right.
That's the 1990s for you.
That was the cheap way.
Yeah. And so I think, and I stopped being in bands, and kind of, I think over the years kind of almost forgot about it. So you'd sort of have, that mindset sort of lingered. But then, I don't know, it was like, oddly, it was probably weirdly when I started working at an advertising and marketing agency that, like, the punk rock spirit sort of kind of reignited itself. And I think that has to do with the place that I work, which is, I think, as close to punk rock as a marketing and advertising agency can be.
Yeah, I mean, from what I know, that's the only way to describe it.
Yeah, so...
I mean, when you were a kid, were your parents really active in pushing, arts, writing, music on you?
My parents were, almost supportive to a fault. Like, they're... just because their concern was do what makes you happy.
Right.
And so there's almost no talk of like do what makes you money.
Right.
And so
when you're like, I'm an experimental noise band, Mom.
Yeah, exactly.
She's like, that is great.
Yeah, I mean,
Do what makes you happy.
Yeah, exactly.
But really be good at it.
Really do not practice here.
so yeah, actually they did have us practice there. They loved that when I was in my first band with, and it was probably because I was with a bunch of people that were older than me. But I was like, hey, we lost our practice space? We can't do it at Sean's house anymore.
Right.
Can we use our basement? And they're like, sure. I mean, that's their way to keep tabs on their 16-year-old kid,
right.
For 4 hours twice a week. So it was, so they were great. And that kind of served me well it served me well.
So when you were
then in my 20s,
when you were young, was it more music centric for you, or did the writing start early, or reading just start early?
I think I always liked stories, and I would draw little comic books with like Joey Lynch. Joey Lynch, who's now like still punk as fuck. Like, living the life.
I just was talking with somebody. What the hell is he up to?
He works. He toured for a lot as like I'm going to get his title wrong, but he worked for Bright Eyes, I think so. He works for like the Conor Oberst company. I'm not as if that's Saddle Creek. Yeah,
He's in Omaha.
Yeah. And he's doing great, and he's being an artist for a living, working for
the punkest place to move from Sioux Falls.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Love you, Joey.
Yeah. So
getting back on track.
Yeah. So it was a lot of like drawing little comic books when we were a kid, and then it was writing stories when my artistic ability plateaued, when I was about 14, and then I started. I feel like I could still draw as well as I did when I was 14, but I'll never get any better.
Like, these comics are working, but I can't get.
Yeah, exactly.
Still can't draw finger.
Yeah, exactly. I'm never gonna get past it. So, yeah, then it became music, and so it was like I wanted to be in a band, and I got a bass because if you want to be in a band and you
Better
odds,
yeah,
exactly, because it's much easier than a guitar, and bands are always looking for a bass player. So
you play guitar when you want to be in a good band. You play bass when you want to be in every band.
I got demoted to bass. Is that
So
funny? Fuck you guys.
I think once on a trivia question we had was, how many times was Bill kicked out of Suffer?
Once.
It ended up just being once. It was really anticlimactic.
yeah,
So your parents were really overly, or not overly, but very
they were
active.
Great. Yeah, they were great, and I mean, I dedicated the book to them, not because it really, I wouldn't do any of this stuff without their support. So it was great. But yeah, so it was I was kind of like a punk rock kid when I was a teenager, and went to college and got a degree in creative writing, which has been a punchline for about a decade until a couple years ago when I got hired by an ad agency.
That'll make you a better joke writer.
Yeah, exactly. It was I got my creative writing degree, then a decade working in social services jobs helped.
What type
really,
of what? I mean,
I worked in a detox center for a few years, overnights. So that was an education, and then I worked in a social service job. Dealing with visitation for parents who were not allowed to see their kids on their own. So that was an education too, spending like 5 years having uncomfortable conversations with with people who didn't want to be talking to me. So but yeah, so and all of that stuff has it directly or indirectly kind of informed what I do. So it's all sort of worked out. It's worked out in every way except financially.
Yeah, hey,
so
often the case. When you were a kid, then, was it a lot of comic books, or what kind of stuff did you read?
Comic books. Like my dad was a huge reader, and so he always had. He would have I remember there being several books around the house at all times. So he would have a book in the kitchen at the kitchen table where he was hanging out there, and there's one on the arm of the couch that he would read during commercials if he was watching sports or and so it was just like wherever he was at, he had a book at arm's length is kind of how I remember it, and and so that was a huge influence on me. And
I mean, just reading the book, you can, or it feels like you're kind of a fan of older humor writing. And I know that there are even a few references in it to older humor books, and I became obsessed with like old Woody Allen books when I was a kid.
Yeah, and I think that's probably my dad too. I mean, I learned what was funny based on. Luckily, my dad has a great sense of humor because I remember I'd wake up at as a little kid and I'd go watch David Letterman with him, and I didn't know what was going on, but I saw I could tell I would gauge what was funny based on what he was laughing at. So it was, at first it was like you learn the rhythms of humor before you learn kind of what the content was. So it was like, oh, Chris Elliott, this guy's something. I don't know why this is funny.
I just know it's
but
working.
It clearly
that was
is.
a punchline.
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of learned that way, and then or Airplane. I mean, I don't know how many times I've seen Airplane in my life, and that's because of my dad. But yeah, that's what I was.
Were you even writing in high school?
Yeah, I I put out a zine when I was, I think, like 17, and that was sort of.
What was it called?
It's called the Zoozine, and I actually and I started with issue number 4.
Yes.
And part of that, I guess, that was my first. I think that was my first foray into satire because I saw there was a lot of issue number 1s that would come out of the Sioux Falls punk rock scene.
Right, yeah. Only issue 1.
Yeah, and then there would be an issue number 2, and you're like, "Holy shit, this thing is for real!
It's got legs.
This thing's taking off." And so I was like, "I'm going to start with number 4 and basically make the issue about the previous 3 issues." There were constant references to the previous issues, and that was like, I think that was probably the start of like me thinking, "Oh, I can do this for real." And a lot of it was like Matt Staub. I mean, you guys probably know Matt Staub, who used to work at Kinko's, and he was basically the reason why there was any kind of punk rock merchandise in Sioux Falls.
Definitely.
It was like Terry Taylor and Matt Staub were the ones who were responsible for the Sioux Falls.
He was
scene.
the key master to all events.
And,
and
he was. I mean, I just remember I didn't know him very well. I knew him like through my friends and like through my bands, but never had one-on-one interaction with him. And so I'd put the Zoozine together, and I think he would print stuff for pretty much anyone.
Yeah.
You know, and so I remember bringing in the zine kind of meekly and be like, hey, could you make a few copies of this? And he was like very polite. He was like, yeah, he's like, I don't know, I'm probably just gonna be able to make a few. And you could tell he was like, oh god,
this kid.
And and then I came back. He's like, come back tomorrow, and so I came back, which is, by the way, like an insane turnaround for the fact that he's doing it for free and off the books like that. And so I came back the next day, and I remember he was with a customer when I walked in. And he was talking to a customer at the counter, and he saw me over his shoulder, and I saw like this big grin on his face, and he kind of held up his finger like, I'll be right with you. And then he finished up with the customer and went back and came back with this huge box and just had a big smile on his face, and he said, I made a few for my friends too. And that was the first validation that I ever got from someone that wasn't obligated to like my stuff. And so
Did you start blushing at that moment?
I did. I was beyond blushing. So I was like, Matt Staub. Matt Staub likes my stuff. So
Right. I got to get to my car.
exactly. Yeah.
So